Hello everybody and welcome to another Lord of the Rings LCG player card review video. In this video we are going to be having a look at the cards from the 6th and final Saga expansion, The Mountain of Fire. And for this video I'm joined by a new host, co-commentator, special guest you might say. Goes by the name of B-Gamer Joe, aka Joseph. Joseph, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks for letting me come on with you. Looking forward to it. I've been playing the game since it came out. I play primarily in the Portland area, and I also get on Octagon occasionally. I have a weekly group that has been working through the campaign recently, and we're playing through this box right now.
What do you think of it so far?
It's pretty tough. That first quest was really good. We tried the epic ending with both quests simultaneously. We got pounded pretty hard last week, but we'll give it another shot next week.
Which is the first one? Cirith Ungol.
Yep.
Good quest?
Yeah, it's really fun. It's one of those quests that some of the cards do good things for you. The rest of the quest is plenty hard to make up for it.
And what about the player cards? Have you had a chance to use any of them? Because for those who aren't aware, I've just moved from the UK to Australia. So right now I do not even have a physical collection. So I cannot even play the game. I don't have a PC either, so I can't play on Octagon. So I've used Rosie. I think that's the only card from this box I've used so far.
Yeah, I've been working through them. I've got through probably 80%. I haven't used Helm or Captains of the West or Raise the Shire, but everything else I've been working in.
Shall we dive straight into the first card? Oh, I should say as well, we're going to actually do them slightly out of order from what you get them in the box. So we're going to take the Saga heroes, the Fellowship heroes, and the Fellowship card and do those at the end. So we're going to do the sort of standard player cards first.
Our first card is Hero Eomer. He's in the leadership sphere. His stats are the same as the tactics hero: 10 threat cost, 1 willpower, 3 attack, 2 defense, 4 hit points. He has the Rohan and Noble and Warrior traits. He has a new response. After Eomer commits to the quest, spend 1 resource from his resource pool to immediately declare him as an attacker and resolve his attack against an enemy in the staging area.
So what do you think of him?
I've had mixed thoughts. I just started using him tonight. I actually put him in a deck with Fast Red and Eowyn and started running him. He has a lot going for him, but he has a lot of cost to using him as well. So I'm not very excited about using him in a lot of decks, but with Fast Red, he's quite a bit of fun. I don't think he's super powerful yet. He's going to make some decks really fun.
Yeah, that spend 1 resource from his resource pool is the only thing that sort of puts me off him a little bit.
Yeah, if you're playing solo, he's pretty much going to be your only attacker, and you pretty much need to attack every turn. So he's going to be spending his resource almost every turn.
Which quest did you run him in?
I played the Fords of Eisen, 7th level, and Into the Pit.
Because I was just thinking about whether or not there are actually going to be targets for the ability in solo. I mean, if you played in against 7th level, that quest just got so many chud goblins in it. It's unbelievable. So presumably there, you did actually manage to get to trigger that response a few times.
Well, I was playing with Fast Red, so I could. So I was triggering it pretty much every time he attacked.
Oh yeah, of course. I just meant some turns there'll be times when there aren't any enemies at all, right?
Right. And then I can go ahead and quest with him even though he's only contributing 1, because I can know I can attack the next turn.
I like the fact that he's got 3 attack base, which is good about him. Because sometimes you get these heroes with funny abilities who are 2-2-2, and you have to invest a lot of effort into trying to get them to fulfill the role that you want them to.
Right. 3 is still pretty tough to chew through enemies in the staging area unless you get some attachments on, but there are plenty of attachments for him at this point, so he powers up pretty fast.
Yeah, he's going to need some help. I think ideally you'd probably want him at about 7 attack would be my aim. Because that's typically what you aim for with Dune here, is 7 going into the staging area.
Yeah, being in the leadership sphere, you can get those extra +1s from the Dunedain Mark, and I got him up to 9 tonight a couple times, and that gets pretty bloody.
How did you manage to get him to 9 then?
I had his horse, Firefoot, Guth Wine, and 2 Dunedain Marks.
So Guth Wine is a card that's coming later in the box, right? So we'll get there eventually. But that sword, as a kind of advance preview, is pretty much Eomer's sword, I think, even though it doesn't say attached to Eomer.
It is nice to have a weapon that can go on any Rohan character and be effective, but it certainly works on him. In Sphere, it was his sword in the books.
What do you think of his comparison to the Tactics version? Because I haven't really used Tactics Eomer a lot since probably, I think I tried him in the Ringmaker cycle. Yeah, against the Voice of Isengard quest. And he was good there, the tactics version. But again,
he is really good just because he powers up so fast. You don't have to get anything on him. If a character leaves play, he's immediately 5 attack, and you can do damage straight out of the gate.
I think when this version of Eomer was sort of spoiled and previewed, people seemed a bit underwhelmed by him because he needs some work to get him to the point where he's going to be able to consistently kill things. But I kind of feel like that's not much of a criticism because a lot of heroes are in that sort of group, if you like. Like Dunhir can't really kill anything until he gets a weapon on him.
Right, he's in the same boat. He'll be, 3 attack?
Yeah, exactly. So I think if you run this guy, you are going to build a certain portion of your deck around him. He's not the kind of hero you can just throw in and have ready to go. Somebody like Spirit Éowyn is fine in that role. Whereas I feel like this Eomer is going to take a little bit of time to get him to where you want to be, or where you want him to be. But once he's there, he'll kick ass.
Yeah, I agree. I think your hero lineup is kind of constricted at this point too, because you either have to keep your threat really low or play Fast Red pretty much.
Fast Red is the first hero that came to mind when you think about trying to attack enemies in the staging area.
Yeah, it sets it up perfectly. You can plan for that next turn.
Yeah, so I guess what you'd want with that lineup you mentioned earlier, which was Eomer, Fast Red, and Éowyn, I assume Tactics Éowyn.
Right.
You'd probably want to quest with Éowyn and maybe Eomer, and then use Fast Red to defend, and then bounce the enemy, and then try and kill it next turn with Eomer.
That's what I was doing, yeah.
Yeah, it's really similar to what you try to do with Dunhir, but I guess there you're trying to kill it the same turn, whereas here you'll be able to get a little bit of questing power out of Eomer and a dead enemy, hopefully.
Yeah, I wish there was an easier way to get his willpower up so he's contributing more. There's the Dunedain attachment, but that's too expensive. There's options like Galadriel, but that's no better her with him rather than some other hero. There's no real Rohan willpower boosting attachments either. So
what about those lovely, juicy willpower boosting Rohan events? The one that gives all Rohan characters +2 willpower, is it, or something? It costs 5?
Astonishing Speed, I think it only costs 3.
I'm thinking of We Do Not Sleep. Until the end of the phase, Rohan characters do not exhaust to commit to quests. I don't see myself running that card just to play with this Eomer, simply because it's Spirit and it costs 5.
Right.
I don't think I've ever used that card, to be honest with you. I think, though, the combo you mentioned with Galadriel, I think some people have already tried to explore that, and somebody posted a deck which seemed like it might work quite well. So the combo there would be that you give Galadriel's willpower to Eomer when he goes on the quest, and then use, is it Heragrim, to add his willpower to his attack, and he'd be 5 willpower then, so he'd go up to 8.
Right, that's pretty effective for only 1 attachment. Actually, 2 attachments because you have to have Nenya in play as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility, though, if you're running Mirror of Galadriel.
Yeah, that'll set up pretty fast. You're going to be looking for Nenya anyway.
Yeah, you'd probably run 3 copies of Nenya, 3 copies of the Mirror, 2 or 3 copies of the Sword, just to get that combo up as quickly as possible.
If you do that, you have to kind of play Éowyn. If you play Fast Red as well, and Eomer, then you have no Tactics option. And Tactics is pretty helpful. You can get Firefoot and or the Spear, which is perfect for him because it gives him that +2 every time since he's attacking the staging area.
I wonder if you could rely on Dunedain Mark and Dunedain Warning, and that be enough, potentially, especially if you've got 3 copies of Guth Wine, because then ideally he'd be 5 with the sword, and then potentially +3. So if he's got 3 Dunedain Marks, I mean. So he'd go to 8. 8 to me feels like enough for most of the time. And if you've got some allies out, or Fast Red ready still or something, then it should be enough to kill the biggest enemies. But also, you could run 2 Spirit Heroes and Eomer, potentially, I think, because with access to Dunedain Warning and Arwen and Domil, that would probably be enough to keep Fast Red alive, because his drawback is weak defense and low health.
Right, I was running the Tactics as well, so I had Raiment of War plus Arwen, and that kept him plenty alive. And then you can also use Close Call in that deck since you're lowering your threat all the time as a backup.
What do you think about using this guy in the Saga quests?
I feel like he's sort of designed for Black Gate, or at least that's what his art kind of suggests. And there's a lot of really high engagement cost enemies in the Black Gate, although your threat does go up pretty quickly. But in my experience, Black Gate is just so crazy, it's not going to make a huge difference.
You mean having his attack high, or your threat?
Just one enemy getting killed every turn just doesn't make much of a difference, period. When you have so many coming out.
Yeah, as a little aside, that I have actually played that quest once. It's the only thing I managed to play before I left the UK. I had to go at it with my Dwarven Miners deck, and it is a crazy quest. Funny, though. Funny to get to turn 8 and suddenly reveal all of these encounter cards and basically have no desk space left because there's so many cards coming out of the encounter deck.
It is a lot of fun. I got massacred grinning every time.
I wonder if Caleb was grinning when he imagined people getting massacred by the Blackgate quest.
An evil grin, I'm sure.
On the subject of the saga things, I think with Aragorn in play, he's going to get even better because it's pretty common to load up Fellowship Aragorn with as many attachments as possible. So if he's got Banner of Elendil, which I think gives everybody +1 willpower if Aragorn's questing, and the Sword That Was Broken, Eomer is suddenly questing for 3 and attacking for however much. So that looks a little bit better. Because 1 willpower on the quest isn't a big deal, especially if you're paying 1 resource for that ability.
Yeah, that's expensive for what you get.
The thing I don't like is that spending a resource, because I feel like you probably want to spend that 1 leadership resource on something else every turn, whether it be the Dunedain Mark or the Warning or, say, Snowborn Scout or any other cheap leadership card. Because there are a few decent Rohan leadership allies as well that you could conceivably run.
Yeah, there are some pretty good ones. I filled my deck with mostly Spirit and Tactics with just the Dunedain Signals, and then a couple Warden of Helm's Deep for a backup defender. And there were turns where I didn't have to spend, and I was able to get a few cards out. But yep, it is expensive. It drains the deck.
Did you run Steward of Gondor?
I did not.
I try to stay away from it myself, but I feel like you might need it with this response.
It certainly would make it easier. I've just been trying not to run it too much, especially in a totally Rohan deck. It feels a bit out of place, but it would help.
I suppose here, with the spending the resource thing, like if you've bounced an enemy the previous turn, you kind of know that you need to keep the leadership resource back. I could imagine like the kind of situation where you'd spend the resource and then suddenly go, oh, I need a resource to use his ability.
Yeah, you have to plan for it. I was able to run Tighten Your Belts and get resources across the board a couple rounds when I didn't have an enemy in play. I didn't need to do it, and it kept the deck working.
Yeah, Tighten Our Belts is a card that I tend to overlook, but it is actually really good.
It really is, yeah. It hurts when you want to play something but know that you shouldn't, but it is worth a play.
Yeah, because you get that next turn where you've suddenly got 3 resources on all your heroes, and that's really nice.
It makes for big turns, yeah.
Any final thoughts on Eomer before we move on to the next card?
A couple weird cards I thought kind of synergize with them. Even a card like Rohan Warhorse. It's restricted, so it takes up one of those slots he really wants for weapons, but if you use that, kill an enemy in the stage near, ready him, he's ready for combat phase again.
What other cards did you think about?
There's a couple silly ones like Late Adventurer, works pretty well. If you don't have an enemy in the staging area, one pops out, you can send him. And then if you want to even get funnier than that, you can use the lore event, Don't Be Hasty, send him, kill somebody, and then take him out of the quest and ready him and have him ready for combat phase.
I was going to say we're getting into serious jank territory now.
Yeah, it's hard to get that one out just because Rohan uses no lore, pretty much.
What did you do for draw in that Fast Dread Eowyn Eomer deck?
I just had a Foehammer.
Nothing else? Ancient Matham?
Nope, just Foehammer, I'm pretty sure. Well, the other form of card draw, it's kind of backwards card draw, but Guth Wine lets you pull cards back from your discard pile, which is effectively selective card draw.
So that it pulls back an ally, doesn't it? From a Rohan ally from your discard pile.
Right.
Yeah, I could see that working. I do like this Eomer, and I definitely do want to try him out. Because I like attacking stuff in the staging area. I really like Dunehare as a hero. I just think that's really fun, to smash them when they can't do anything to you.
There is something special about that.
Also, we didn't really pick up on his traits, but he is a noble and a warrior. So there might be some other things you could do with him there, because there's an event coming up later on that has something to do with nobles. And warrior, I guess it gives him access to Raiment of War, but I don't think that's a good attachment for him at all.
Well, it's good to see those traits on heroes just so you can use some of these newer event cards that take 2 different traits.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. You could potentially run Coney in a Trap, or the other one, what's it called? Well-Warned? I think that needs a noble.
Right, and if you're running a ranger, you could use Proud Hunters.
Yeah, that would be a good way to get him some resources.
Yeah, that's a favorite event of mine. I've been using a lot.
I wonder which ranger you could put in. I guess it needs a unique ranger, doesn't it? So it could rely on an ally, possibly.
Yeah, that cuts down on efficiency, but it's possible.
Might be worth exploring, maybe.
Yeah, I can't think of a ranger hero right off the bat I'd really want to put in.
The only one I can think of off the top of my head is Damrod, and simply because he is a trap-oriented hero, which trap decks are interested in keeping enemies in the staging area, but they're also interested in keeping enemies trapped, whereas Eomer wants to kill them.
Right. I was thinking the Entangling Nets is a pretty good attachment with Eomer just because it makes them much more killable out there.
Yeah, lowering their defense by 2.
But that's a bit of work.
Yeah, not inconceivable though. I could see that being a good combo. And then he could dive in, kill them, stick his sword right through their chest, and get 3 resources for doing it.
That's worth a bit. Oh, the other fun combo I triggered with him in the 7th level, when you have so many orcs with low hit points, is I'd have to engage 2 enemies, find one with fast red, throw it back, and then the next turn I could use Firefoot and kill one in the staging area and one engage with me just off that one attack. So I actually killed a cave troll that way with 2 attacks, bypassing his 4 defense. It was fun.
Alright, shall we move on to the next player card?
Certainly, go for it.
Okay, this is Tom Cotton. He is a tactics hero, 8 threat cost, 1 willpower, 1 attack, 3 defense, and 3 health. He is a hobbit, and his text box reads, while you are engaged with an enemy with an engagement cost higher than your threat, the first hobbit ally you play each round does not require a resource match. And then he has a response. After a hobbit ally enters play, it gets +2 attack until the end of the round. What do you think of him?
I think he's solid, but not amazing yet. I've been using him in a couple decks, and he's quite a decent defender for being a hobbit, but his responses and effects, I haven't been able to get them to do much for me yet.
Yeah, that 3 defense is nice on a hobbit.
Effectively, he's just as good as a Marthiel as a defender, just like he is, and he's pretty easy to power up with some ring mail, and then 1 ring mail on him, and he's as good as Baragond.
Yeah, and he can also take the Hobbit Cloak as well, which I think is not restricted.
That's right.
Yeah, so potentially 6 defense already without much effort at all.
And he has really low threat costs for a tactics hero, so he gets you that tactics access without bringing the Hobbit deck too high in threat.
Yeah, because that passive engagement effect, that's a pretty kind of standard Hobbit type effect, but it's usually on, if you know what I mean. Like, you're usually able to engage things that are higher than your threat.
Right. I just want some Hobbit allies that are actually worth playing.
Well, I think there's a decent spread of Hobbit allies. Because I feel like this response is effectively a bonus for allies that are a bit crap, but get much better now.
Yeah, I just still don't want to play most of them. They don't do much for you after they get into play. What do we got? Non-uniques, we have Keen-Eyed Took, Curious Brandybuck, Halfling Bounder, and Wandering Took. Some of those are pretty good.
Which ones are good?
The Halfling Bounder can be really good, but there's that additional cost of playing side quests. Curious Brandybuck is good just because it's free, but it's fleeting. Actually, the Curious Brandybuck is one of my favorites to play with him because you can drop him in for free when you know you're going to have a combat phase where you need that additional attack.
Yeah, so you need to travel somewhere to get him to come into play for free from your hand, don't you?
Right, as soon as you travel to a location, you can drop him for free, but when that active is explored, he'll leave play.
I think that's a really good combo, because you travel somewhere, get your Brandybuck down, he's suddenly got +2 attack from Tom's response. Maybe he can help kill something, and then the next turn he goes on the quest, explores the location, and goes to the bottom of your deck.
Yep, that's 2 attack and 2 willpower for free.
What else is there that might be useful? Like, Robin Smallborough, he's decent.
Yeah, I've been playing him. He's just good willpower and lore as well, so you can raise their engagement costs with him, I believe, right? Spend a spirit resource and raise them by the number of quest points on the active location, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So that synergizes with his first ability as well if you need to get around that resource match.
I like that his response isn't just your Hobbit allies, it's cross-table.
Right, I was noticing that too. That makes a big difference. But it's not super common that more than one person is playing hobbits, in my experience.
No, but somebody might have the odd Hobbit ally in their deck. Halfling Bounder, you mentioned.
That's true.
I have seen people run that outside of Hobbit decks. And I have run Curious Brandybuck in some odd spirit decks sometimes.
We can get a secrecy tactics deck now if you put him and Merry and Eowyn together. We have no tactics secrecy cards, but you could do it.
Well, I guess you could use it in conjunction with his ability. So you just run a load of Hobbit allies, even if they're not great, they're still
That's
going to
true.
be able to do something now.
He has possibilities. I think he'll become more interesting if we see some more Hobbit allies come out.
Well, I guess actually maybe if the Hobbit allies are quite good already and they're getting +2 attack off him, will they get overpowered?
Right, but most of these Hobbit allies, I'm not sure if they have any attack at all. One attack would be nice.
What do you think your lineup is in terms of heroes if you run this guy?
Yeah, that is the question. If you're playing solo, he's going to be your defender, so you're going to have a willpower hero and then an attacker. Merry is obvious choice, but then you're stuck with 2 tactics. Well, I guess you can do you're going to have to do tactics, Merry, if you're going to do hobbits. And then I would do Sam to make a solo deck work.
I was thinking maybe Sam could become your attacker here. Normally you use Sam as a quester and a defender in a Hobbit deck, or I do anyway. But maybe now you could use Sam as the quester and the attacker, because he'll be 2 with his ability to attack. And then if you're running Tom, you've got access to tactics for Dagger of Westerness, which you'd run anyway if you were running Merry. He's not going to be as good as Merry, but it seems
Merry
like an option.
is too good, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like an option so you could run a 3rd sphere. And also, you have to remember that Tom's second ability does make up for the loss of attack power from Merry.
That's true, and that would be a fresh way to play hobbits too, because Merry killing everything does get old eventually.
So I guess maybe Tom, Sam, and Pippin?
Yep, that would be the same sphere lineup as the classic Hobbit deck.
I feel like you want Fast Hitch.
Certainly.
It's too good to kind of leave at home for me.
Yeah, 1 for any Hobbit character is great. I find it's hard to do much with Tom Cotton besides defend. You can put some Dagger of Westerness, and he can be an attacker as well, but with that 1 starting attack, it takes a while to build up.
Realistically, you probably want him to be your main defender, in which case he's in a good spot already from the beginning of the game, as you said earlier, to fulfill that role.
Yeah, I've been using him in a couple decks, and he does the defender, but he doesn't do much else.
Also, another thing about Merry, he's got that second ability, which is awesome, but often I find that there's either nobody to use it on in solo, or I forget to use it, so it doesn't actually come into play all that often for me.
Same here.
I don't know if it's because I typically use hobbits against the sort of Black Riders Saga type quests, where you end up engaged with 1 big enemy instead of a lot of smaller ones. But I feel like that's not much of a loss if you do swap out Tom for Merry and maybe explore some other options. Because there is also a spirit version of Merry, so now your partner could run that guy and you can use Tom as your tactics hero and still run a nice Hobbit deck.
It is really nice to have a tactics Hobbit seed, so if you want to run Spirit Merry, you can, because he's awful good as well.
Overall opinion on Tom then?
I think he'll be good. I don't think he's awesome yet, but I'm looking forward to him improving as we see more hobbits.
All right, should we do the next card?
Sure. Next we have Rosie Cotton, a unique leadership ally, 2 cost, 2 willpower, 0 attack, 0 defense, 2 hit points. Hobbit trait. Her action is exhaust Rosie Cotton to choose a hobbit, hero, and an attribute, willpower, attack, defense. Add Rosie Cotton's willpower to that hero's chosen attribute until the end of the phase, a limit once per phase. What do you think of her?
Well, you asked for a Hobbit ally, and you got one.
And this is the Hobbit ally that will define the rest of them, or supersede the rest of them, I'm guessing.
This is the only player card I've had a chance to use in this box, and I've only got 1 word for it, and that word is amazing.
I had awesome, but yes.
2 A words. It's got to be good.
Yeah, she is amazing. I mean, just looking at her cost and her willpower, she is the cheapest willpower in leadership, barring Dwarven Sellsword, and he's actually more expensive long term. But there's no other leadership ally that has 2 willpower for 2 cost. And then her action just makes it bonkers.
Yeah, it doesn't look that powerful at first, but when you actually play it, it turns out to be really strong, not just because you're getting +2, but because of the versatility for me.
It's really flexible.
Yeah, and also the fact that it goes until the end of the phase means that if you've got a Hobbit hero with action advantage, e.g. Merry or Sam with fast hitches, then you're going to get multiple uses out of that boost.
Right. Yeah, hobbits usually have lots of actions. Yeah, it's great.
And like you said, amazing stats, 2 for 2 and 2 health.
Yep, 2 hit points is huge too. I would have expected 1, and that would have been fair, but even better.
Yeah, the trouble with 1 would have been the usual deal 1 damage to all exhausted characters type treacheries, because she could conceivably be exhausted before you reveal an encounter card. Although, again, nice thing about her ability... Yeah, exactly. Nice thing about her ability is you can wait until after you've revealed a card to use it.
Yep, it's perfect. And it continues that theme of flexible willpower for hobbits. I was using her along with Hobbit ponies and Song of Hopes and Galadriel, and I was able to, playing Black Riders, manipulate my quest number by huge amounts at the end of the quest phase.
Yeah, on the subject of Black Riders, she's also amazing for high tests, because you sometimes need to get a willpower boost to make sure you can pass that test.
Yep, she was helping every chance.
You mentioned Galadriel there. I believe you may have discovered an OP combo with Galadriel and Rosie.
Yeah, I was playing two-handed with Galadriel over on the other side. You can put Fast Hitch on Rosie, because Fast Hitch goes on a Hobbit character. You can commit her to the quest, and then use Nenya and Galadriel to push over 4 willpower. She's committing for 6. You can ready her, and then immediately, or at the end of the quest phase, you can add her 6 willpower to someone else's willpower, effectively getting Galadriel's 4 twice.
What a shame Eomer's not a Hobbit, because then you could insert Rosie into that Herogrim combo, and suddenly Eomer's got 7 willpower to go up to 9 attack or whatever. That would be 10 attack, sorry, so that would be really awesome. Maybe if they ever release a Hobbit trait granting card.
Hairy Toes.
Yeah, Hairy Toes, 1 cost attachment. Attached to a hero. Attach hero gains the Hobbit trait.
There you go.
They need to be 3 foot tall as well.
All right.
Only short heroes need apply.
I don't think we'll see that.
If I ever get the chance to design a card, we'll see that.
Good luck.
There are way many more cards I'd rather design than that one.
And then I've seen other combos. If you sword thinger, have you seen those combinations?
What would that do exactly? So give her a resource. What benefit is there to turning her into a hero rather than just keeping her as an ally?
Primarily, it's just easier to raise her willpower at that point. I think I've seen people putting a Fireside Song on her, then adding more songs and getting her willpower up to 5, 6, and then you can add that number more than once with your Fast Hitch, and she becomes insane.
That does sound good, actually.
Takes a lot of setup. Once you have it, you get some invincible hobbits.
Yeah, getting defense boost with her is also really good, because there are so many things that can boost attack.
Right, and it's always that opportunity to do it after you see that shadow card, and then you can either help your defender out if he needs it, or save it for your attacker if your defender doesn't need it. The flexibility is so powerful.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot else to say about her other than that she's awesome. And that I'm disappointed you didn't read that flavor text out in a high-pitched voice.
Go for it. I can't read it. It's too small. Stare at my computer. I just can't see it. Should we move on to Elfhelm?
Okay, this is Elfhelm. He is a tactics ally. Cost 4, 1 willpower, 2 attack, 2 defense, 3 health. He is Rohan and warrior traded. And he has an action. Spend 1 resource from a Rohan hero's resource pool to put Elfhelm into play from your hand under your control. At the end of the phase, discard Elfhelm if he is still in play. Any thoughts on him?
Not impressed. There's some interesting things you can do with him, but he's awful expensive for what you get. He's not very specialized, so I don't know. What do you think?
Well, that's what I was sort of thinking about him, is that I'm not convinced you would ever actually pay the 4 for him. That's not the point of this ally, I think. The point is that sort of save effect, effectively. Get out of jail kind of quick when you need a defender.
Right. He can be a feint, basically, right?
Yeah, so, all right, good things. One is spend a resource from a Rohan hero. Doesn't have to be a tactics hero,
right,
first of all.
Tactics hero on the board, really.
Yeah, exactly. So he could conceivably be running any Rohan deck, which I think is awesome. And even if you've only got 1 Rohan hero, it could be worth considering. I like the fact that it's not a phase-based action. It's just action. So you can do this.
Usually these are combat phase actions, aren't they?
Yeah, how many times have you been nailed by something like the Southron elite or the Haradrim elite into Ithilien when they make that immediate attack and you forgot to leave a defender?
Right, and you can't use feint.
Exactly. So this guy's your kind of get out of jail free card there, again, because you don't really care if he dies, because at the end of the phase he's being discarded anyway.
Right. Only risk there is there are shadow cards that punish destroying allies, but still, most of the time it's going to be just as good.
As we were saying though, I'm not sure I'd ever want to pay the 4 for him, because I feel like if you get into the territory of high-cost allies, for me, they need to be specialized. Like, they need to be doing one thing, and they need to be doing it really well. Point of comparison being the Harad allies from the Haradrim cycle. They cost 5, but you've got Firiel questing, Jubair defending, and Yazan attacking, and they're really good in their respective roles. Whereas Elfhelm, the stats are exactly the same as the Spirit ally, which came out in the first cycle, and I think people used to run him then just because there weren't many other good allies at the time, but also because he's got that ability where if he's ready, you can lower your threat if it goes up, right, from questing or from encounter card effects.
Right, that still can be a powerful effect if you have the money to get him into play.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like there, he's probably worth paying 4 for. Whereas Elfhelm, Tactics Elfhelm on stats alone, I don't think it is worth 4.
There's ways to reduce it, but it's still pretty expensive for what you get.
You thinking of Theoden?
Theoden or Hirgon.
Oh yeah, Hirgon's another good check. Again though, I feel like I'd probably rather play a different 4-cost ally with him.
Yeah, I mean, compare him to Legolas 4-cost, and there's no competition, is there?
I'd probably still run him in a Hirgon deck, though, if you're playing Theoden and Eowyn, just because it's tactics anyway. You've got Rohan heroes. Why not run Elfhelm?
Maybe just one.
The other thing I did think of, and you'll probably hit me for this, but you could conceivably use his action to put him into play and then discard him to do another Rohan effect. I'm starting to laugh just as I say this out loud, because I'm never going to do this, but it's a possibility. You could throw in Tactics Elfhelm and then play Ride to Ruin for a laugh.
Well, you could throw him in, take an attack, take a couple damage. He's going to go away, so you might as well play it.
Yeah, if there's something that you want to do that requires discard an ally, then why not? And actually, Rohan decks do run Valiant Sacrifice quite a lot. So this is another way of getting your draw.
That's true. That's good.
Also, there are effects that get back Rohan allies. So you've talked about or touched on Guth Wine and his gambling as well.
Yeah, that's one of the best combos I came across is using Guth Wine. You could pull him back potentially every turn, and it's like recycling a feint almost, except you can use any resource to pay for it.
I feel like there's potential with this guy.
Yeah, on the face of it, he looks way too expensive, and it's not very tempting to put him in, but there's ways that he could be used pretty effectively, I think.
I guess the drawback again is the spend one resource bit of the cost.
Yeah, but that's just as much as any event you might play that would stop a attack.
True. And I suppose here it's a Rohan hero, as I said at the beginning, which is a positive thing. Doesn't need to be your tactics hero. If you've got, say, the new Eomer with Steward of Gondor on him, you might have resources lying around that you can use to potentially put Elfhelm in every turn. Because if he's got Guth Wine, you could get Elfhelm back, etc., etc.
Right, most of my Rohan decks playing solo in Trisphere, and in Trisphere you usually have, unless you've really built the deck well, you're going to have extra resources on somebody, and that would make it easier, reduce the cost basically.
Do you think you would put him into play for the 2 attack?
It would be. Well, it's nice to have the flexibility again. Sometimes if you're 1 or 2 attacks short, this could help a lot in killing a big enemy that would pound you again next turn, so it'd be worthwhile.
Yeah, overall, I feel positive about Elfhelm. I don't feel like there's massive competition either from the other 2 versions, his Spirit Ally version and the Leadership Hero.
It is peculiar that we have 3 versions of Elfhelm now, but the Leadership Hero I've seen on the table quite a bit, and he's a lot of fun. But yeah, I don't see Spirit Elfhelm out very much at this point, so there's room for him.
Yeah, maybe it could be harder to use Elfhelm in a Rohan Fellowship. Yeah, I feel like people try to build Rohan Fellowships quite a lot because it seems to work better when you've got 6 heroes and lots of mounts and the Leadership Elfhelm to give buffs to them all.
Yeah, that is a lot of fun.
Can be difficult to get a good solo Rohan deck.
Yeah, it's a bit expensive to get all those horses out and spend a slot for Leadership Elfhelm.
Okay, do we want to have a look at the next card? I feel like, so the next 2 cards kind of come as a pair. So maybe we should consider them together?
Sure, first we have Elodie, ally version. He is in the lore sphere with 3 cost, 2 willpower, 1 attack, 1 defense, 3 hit points. He has the Noldor and Ranger traits. and he has the text, "Well, Elrond is in play. Elodie gets +2 attack and a response after you optionally engage an orc enemy. Ready Elodan."
Okay, so here comes Elrond. He is a spirit ally. Cost 3. He's almost identical to his brother. He's got 2 willpower, 1 attack, 1 defense, 3 health. He is a Noldor and a ranger, and his text is, while Elodan is in play, Elrond gets +2 defense, and he's got the same response. After you optionally engage an orc enemy, ready Elrond. So we have a new version, or new versions, of the 2 brothers, Elrond's children, I believe?
Right.
What do you think of them?
I think they're a lot of fun. It's fun to have new options here. I've been playing heroes a bit lately, but they seem a bit eclipsed at this point as far as first choice heroes. So it's fun to have new options for playing them again in a new context.
Yeah, I always want to try to make a brothers deck, but it's very difficult to get those 2 working now, because they need a lot of setup and a lot of help.
Right, they eat up a lot of resources, and they don't provide a lot of willpower, and they need several attachments to actually make them work.
I feel like you could probably level that criticism at a lot of heroes, but it just seems like more effort than usual with those 2.
If you put Arwen with them, Hero Arwen, you can send those resources around, and you can make a pretty good deck. But I think it's a good option to have. You can mix and match and have 1 ally and 1 hero, or start with 1 hero and play already, although I haven't tried that yet.
I like these 2 as well. The only thing I don't like about having the hero and ally combination is that if you don't get the ally, your hero's underpowered.
Yeah, I mean, you only can put 3 in unless you really accelerate your card draw. You might not see him for a good bit of the game.
Yeah, and then there's a question of which one do you want to rely on. Like, normally you want a solid defender, so maybe you use the Elrond hero and the Elodan ally.
But then you don't have that defender powered up at the beginning of the game. He's a 1 defense, where you kind of want that 3 right away.
Exactly, that was my thought on him. That aside, I like the response a lot, though. It's conditional on orcs, obviously, but I think in quests where there are orcs, and let's face it, there are a lot of orcs in Lord of the Rings, it would be really good.
Yeah, I mean, just 3 for their 2 willpower is okay, but then on top of that, you got pretty decent stats, or very good stats once you get them both in play, and on top of that, they have good hit points, and on top of that, they have a readying ability, so I think they're a good bit better than I've heard some people think.
Yeah, cost 6 together, if you consider them as a pair, but they're Noldor, so in Noldor decks, what have you got? To the sea?
Right, so you can reduce their cost by discarding cards.
Yeah, if you run these 2 with Eristor and Círdan, or Arwen, or Elrond even, maybe?
Yeah, I've been playing them in a deck with those exact 3 heroes you listed first, Eristor, Arwen, and Círdan, and they were working really well.
I think getting 4 willpower, followed by potentially 4 attack, if you think Elodan's going to be 3 and Elrond is 1, or a defense with a 3 attack, is really solid.
Yeah, that's plenty for your money there. And then there's different options to boost those stats even more within the Noldor sphere, so you can get these guys powered up pretty intensely.
What if you run Sword Thane and get 4 Noldor heroes? Like, you could run Elodan and Elrond as the hero. So Elrond is a hero, and then Sword Thane Elodan. Is it worth it?
I don't know. What would the hero trait do for him besides get that resource?
Yeah, that's a good question. Not worth it then, in other words.
Yeah, but I was running them both. If you have Círdan in play, you can quest with them, and then you can optionally engage an orc, ready both of them, and then defend with Elrond for 3, and then if you have Círdan's ring on him, you can ready him after he defends, so he's defending for 4, and then they can both attack back with, let's see, that's 5 attack, and then there's other ways to boost too. You have your Rivendell blades you can put on these since they go on a character rather than a hero. So they can become they can run your whole combat element of your deck if you aren't playing too crazy of a quest.
I was thinking about, could you use Elrond as your main defender, so the ally? If you've got Elrond and Elodan, I kind of want to say no now that I've thought about it. I've sort of compared him to Joubert in my head a little bit. I feel like you can rely on Joubert in some quests because of his ability to discard a shadow card. I bet this came up in testing, but I wish their spheres were flipped so that the defender was lore, so he could have Burning Brand.
Right. I kind of put these just lump them together in my head and I forget which one's which until I get them on the table. But yeah, I agree. It would be nice if the defender could use Burning Brand. But it's unusual to have a 3-attack lore ally too, I think. And then in the same Noldor deck, you can run Lords of the Eldar and boost their stats even further.
I think you could probably make a nice orc hunting deck now as well, just by including lots of orc cards. Although I think these two can't take Blade of Gondolin, because that might be hero only.
Yeah, that is.
They can take Rivendell Blade though, which is arguably better than Blade of Gondolin.
Yeah, it's hard to make that Blade of Gondolin work all the time, but put a Rivendell Blade on one of these. You can even put 2 on Elodan, and then he's attacking for 3 with -4, which is overkill most of the time. But then if you use those other stat boosting, either Círdan's Ring or Lords of the Eldar, you can get a big combat turn out of these guys.
I guess my final thought is that I'm a little bit hesitant about running cards that rely on some other card to be good. So I'm not sure about the hero-ally combination, but I'm very willing to try it out, because somebody did post a deck with that combination. It looked alright, actually. It's just, if you take it up against harder things, and you've got a 1 defense main defender, you're in big trouble if you don't get the ally quickly.
Maybe you just stretch that mulligan rule, huh?
What, you mean take 5 mulligans until you get Elodan?
There you go. The other option, Noldor, if you're running Aristor, then you start to see cards coming through your hand a lot faster, and then you can set up those 2-card combinations more reliably. So that's worth something.
Also, there's Cloak of Lorien, which actually gives +1 defense.
Does that work for characters as well?
Yeah, not just heroes.
And even up to +2 with the forest, right?
Yeah, so what you need to do is find a quest where there are forest locations and orc enemies. There's bound to be one out there.
Trudon Chetwood, there you go.
I've already done that one, though.
Break into the Fellowship? Yeah, all forests and orcs in there. Although the orcs are tough. And the Rivendell Blades don't even help very much because their defense isn't high. It's just that toughness that gets you.
Well, this is where my notes end, unfortunately, so I have no idea what the next card is.
Next, we have Captains of the West, a leadership event. It's 3 cost, as a quest action. Until the end of the phase, each noble hero gets +1 willpower and does not exhaust to commit to the quest.
Bike spokes, man.
That's what it looks like, doesn't it? It's super expensive, but I think it could be used, but it's going to be tough.
I don't think it's bike spokes, but I don't think it's a solo card. I'm putting it on the same level as Rally the West.
Right, that's fair.
I just think 3 for that effect as a one-off, probably not worth it. But 4-player, if there are loads of noble heroes around, I think it could be worth it.
I think noble is one of the most common traits for heroes. I think I did a quick check here, and the numbers approximately are about 40 out of around 100 or 90 heroes have the noble trait.
So decent chance that if you bring it to a random game, you'll get some value out of it.
Yeah, it's going to help. But you'd really want to kind of plan to have the majority of the heroes on the table have that trait to make it really worth that 3 cost. Supposedly, leadership, the cost isn't as big a deal, but when I'm running leadership, I'm spending everything and trying to get stuff on the table.
It is a powerful effect, arguably. I mean, not exhausting is always good.
I'm just trying to think of how many noble heroes have decent quest stats and combat stats, and there are some, but sometimes like Boromir's not going to care much if he gets +1 and doesn't exhaust. He's going to contribute 2, but a lot of those nobles have 2 willpower or more.
I'm in the middle on it. I mean, it's not a bad card by any means, but it's not one that I see myself using soon.
It's pretty specific. It's not one that is going to go in very many decks, that's for sure.
I'd like to use it in kind of an epic scenario like Black Gate or Pelennor Fields or something. Be really cool.
It would help a lot in those quests, because then you'd have just so much more ready for that combat phase, which is really going to hit you. I was trying to think of what decks it would be good in, and I just thought of a couple. Sylvan would be pretty good because you're running mostly nobles, and the Gondor deck would be pretty good. Some Rohan decks, but you aren't running a lot of leadership. But those 2 decks, certainly you have a lot of noble leaders or noble heroes, but a lot of other decks just have 1 or 2. Yep, I'll try to use it, but I don't think it's going to jump into very many decks.
No, I don't think I'd use it in solo. It's definitely a multiplayer card for me.
Yep, I agree. Probably my card I'm least excited about in the pack, actually.
I guess if I had to go for one for that award, if you like, then it probably would be this one, really.
Or the next one.
Oh no, the next one's awesome.
It might be.
Okay, well,
Eventually.
this is my card, isn't it? So I at least get the pleasure of reading it. And I also get the pleasure of criticizing the artwork, which may or may not be a good thing. Okay, this is Raise the Shire. It is a 1-cost tactics event, and it's got a huge text box. Here we go. Response. After you engage an enemy, search the top 5 cards of your deck for a Hobbit ally and put it into play. Search your entire deck instead if that enemy's engagement cost is higher than your threat. Shuffle your deck. At the end of the round, if that ally is still in play, return it to your hand. What made you think it wasn't very good then?
Mostly because of my pessimistic view of the Hobbit Allies.
Maybe, but I think there's a lot to like here. Because in general, I like effects that search for things. So searching your entire deck is that bit in brackets, but usually with hobbits, the enemy's engagement cost is higher than your threat most of the time.
Right, especially at the beginning when you're going to be wanting to search and find that piece.
Yeah, and so this is a way of getting Rosie out early, first of all, which is really cool.
That's right, I hadn't thought of that.
Synergizes with Tom Cotton really well because Tactic Sphere, go and grab an ally, and then you can play it because hopefully you'll have his passive ability switched on, so it doesn't matter what sphere the ally is. So again, go and get Rosie.
And then she gets +2 attack for that turn as well.
Yeah, why not? You could take advantage of that, or use her boost if you wanted to for something else.
Yeah, it's going to really help out that combat phase if the Hobbit deck is struggling.
Yeah, like you said though, are there good Hobbit allies?
I'm confident we'll get a few more that will make it come together.
Also, shuffle your deck. So we talked earlier about the Curious Brandybuck. He goes to the bottom of your deck. This is a way of getting him further up the stack, if you like.
Oh, that's true. I forget that about the Curious Brandybuck. Goes in the bottom. Yep, that's good.
Yes, I think there's some nice, not combos, but some nice synergy maybe with the other cards that you might be running in your new Tom Cotton aggro Hobbit deck.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Oh, that's a challenge. Challenge accepted.
I'm sure it will happen, but I haven't come up with an aggro Tom Cotton deck yet.
Also, after you engage an enemy is a good beginning to that response, because I'm thinking of Black Rider's quests. You can unexpectedly end up engaged with a Black Rider. And
that's true. There is quite a few quests where you can get engaged with the enemy outside of the combat phase.
Again, we talked about Elf Helm as a kind of sacrifice or like emergency feint. You could do exactly the same here with the Hobbit ally. Just throw them under the bus.
Yep. Again, it can be like a feint, and feint is one of the cards that always gets used.
Yeah, and some of the newer quests have got stuff like those little spiders in Beneath the Sands, where it's got the shadow effect of put it into play, engage with you, and maybe give it a shadow card. I'm not sure if it gets that bit, but I think the Broodling? It definitely comes into play, engage with you anyway, so that would trigger this.
Yep. It's flexible again.
Yeah, the only downside is you only get to search the top 5 if it doesn't happen to be above your threat level, which means that you probably need to be packing a reasonable amount of Hobbit allies for this to be reliable.
Right.
And of course, there aren't exactly a plethora of amazing Hobbit allies. But again, I feel like why not chuck them all into a deck and see if it works with Tom Cotton?
I will after we get maybe one more. Right now, there is, I think, 9 different Hobbit allies. So you can get a deck with a lot of Hobbits in it. But just what do they do for you after that initial turn where they have that attack?
That's the trick. We've got to find ways of making them leave play, I guess.
Hobbit Sylvans.
What's that leadership one called, where you discard the top card of your deck to bring him back to your hand?
Oh, there's the Keen-Eyed Took that fiddles with the top card of your deck. You're thinking of that?
Could we now be in the era of the Keen-Eyed Took? Watch this space, 2018. I'm telling you, 2018 is the year of the Keen-Eyed Took.
Good enough for me.
What about the artwork, then, on this card?
It doesn't bother me. I think there's different ways to portray hobbits, and I don't think Peter Jackson's is the only way. I don't think it's a very consistent way with the book. I can see why some people don't like it. They look kind of weird, but it doesn't bother me.
Well, I'll tell you my problem with it, if you like.
Go for it.
Right, so I'm listening to the audiobook of The Hobbit at the moment, and first chapter, I think it's one of the very first lines, is, "Hobbits have no beards." So why is there a hipster hobbit in the middle of this drawing?
Oh, you got me.
Is this
a glorious beard?
He's a Portland native. He's the hipster hobbit. Look at him.
I think I saw that guy in a coffee shop this afternoon.
Was he drinking a skinny latte and eating a vegan wrap?
Pretty much around his waxed mustache.
I like the art, don't get me wrong, but having heard that line really recently and then seen this card and thought,
Yep, that slipped by somebody.
Do hobbits know how to use a bow?
Yeah, actually, in Scouring of the Shire, there is a whole troop of hobbit archers. So that's the ally I'm waiting for, actually, is a ranged, maybe even just a one attack. But I think we need a couple tactics hobbits. That'll be fun.
Any thoughts on Raise the Shire before we move on?
I did have one combo I felt clever about. If you grab Bilbo with this, ally Bilbo, you get to search for a pipe, and then you pull them back to your hand. You can play them again next turn and get your pipes on board really quickly.
That is quite good. Haven't you been playing a Spirit Tactics Hobbit deck recently with Bilbo?
Yeah, getting those pipes out really helps a lot if you want to keep your threat low and get those cards into hand. Yeah, I should add this. You convinced me.
Yeah, I like this card. I don't know why people are down on it. Are people down on it?
They are certainly down on the art, I can tell you that.
I'm in the middle. I'm down on the hipster.
Yeah.
I guess it is a little bit cartoony, but it's not a bad drawing. It's a good drawing.
Yep, I think it accurately portrays the feeling they were going for with that raising of the Shire, gathering the troops kind of thing. As warlike as hobbits can look, I guess.
Cute, yet somehow threatening.
There you go.
Okay, shall we move on?
Next we have Guth Wine, a 2-cost leadership attachment. It's unique. It has the item and weapon traits. It's restricted. Its text is attached to a Rohan hero. Response: after attached hero is declared as an attacker, exhaust Guth Wine to give that hero +2 attack for this attack. If this attack destroys an enemy, return a Rohan ally from your discard pile to your hand. What do you think there?
Basically, this attachment is made for leadership Eomer, first of all, it seems to me. Although there's no reason it can't go on other Rohan heroes because it doesn't say attached to Eomer.
So it can go on any hero, and that is nice, but it is leadership, so there's only so many leadership Rohan heroes you're going to be having around when you're playing Rohan.
Yeah, I mean, it could go on Hammer, for instance.
Yeah, that's a great combination, since you have to discard cards out of your hand. If you're actually killing things, you're immediately returning cards to your hand to feed that event recycle engine.
The thing there is it might not be a purely Rohan deck if it is Hammer, because the other leadership Rohan heroes aren't great questers, as I remember. So we've got Eomer and Theodred.
And Elfhelm.
Yeah, and so you might put those guys on the quest, but they're not going to be taking care of your willpower needs by themselves, that's for sure.
Or Erkenbrand. You could do a defender there, and then you could do Eowyn as your quester. Then you'd have a balance.
That is a good point. I always overlook Erkenbrand because I think he's one of the few heroes that I've never used.
Ah, really? He is really good. He's usually good early game, then if you don't have a healing out, he kind of fizzles. But yeah, he's powerful.
Whether it's on Eomer or Hammer, I think the ability is really good. +2 attack, though, only for one attack, which is a little bit disappointing, I suppose.
It is kind of Rohan's theme, though. Pretty much all of their specific attachments are just for one attack or one defense, like the Golden Shield.
But getting the ally back is awesome.
Yeah, that's huge. It's like controlled card draw. It's great.
I guess with Eomer, you're looking to build him up to a big number so that he can just one-hit things. So the requirement of needing to destroy an enemy isn't necessarily going to be a problem.
Yeah, it might be early game, but early game you aren't going to have allies in your discard pile anyway, so yeah, it is a restriction, but I don't think it's going to cripple it for sure.
There's also a nice combo with Spirit Eowyn, because you can throw away an ally that you can't afford to play, kill it with somebody else, kill an enemy, with somebody else, and then get that ally back.
That's true. And then you have the Spirit allies that you can just discard at will to place progress or ready heroes, and then pull it straight back as well.
I guess the other thing that came to mind is that as it's a weapon, you always think of Foehammer, but this has the exhaustion requirement to get the +2, so not a great combo there, which is unusual for weapons, I suppose.
Yeah, but that's just like Harrogrim. You have to exhaust it as well. Yeah, I always consider that with Rohan. It's hard to get card draw with Foehammer, so this is great to have the alternate card draw where you don't need to exhaust that weapon.
I said earlier about Valiant Sacrifice as well as a card that Rohan tends to use for draw. Again, allies leaving play. This is a way to get that ally back. This is great with the Tactics Elfhelm as well.
Yeah, you can just keep recycling him every turn if you wanted.
You know the ally Gamling, who you exhaust to get back a Rohan ally who's just been discarded? I sometimes find he's not enough to cover all of the discard effects. For example, like if you run him with Ally Hammer and Escort from Edoras, you're losing 2 allies, so you need to make a choice, whereas this gives you another option to grab those guys back.
That's been my trouble with Rohan discard decks. You get it set up, but it's still not that big of an engine. You're only discarding 1 ally a turn, basically, because you can't afford to pay for more and draw more. So having option to pull 2 back to hand is huge, and gambling, he doesn't do anything else. This gives you +2 attack and helps you do what you need to do and pull an ally back to hand. So I think it's huge.
Gambling costs 3 as well, so it can take a while to get him into play. Also, if you don't find him, it can be annoying. So this essentially might give you 6 chances, if you run 3 copies of this and 3 copies of Gambling, to get your ally retrieving effect.
Yeah, this will help that kind of deck get online a lot faster. I agree.
Do you think you run 3 copies of this weapon?
I have been. Well, the one deck I played so far. I think it's worth it.
I think I probably would run 3 as well, just for consistency.
Yep, I think I'd rather run 3 of this than 3 of his horse, Firefoot.
So do you think you run Guth Wine, Firefoot, and Dunedain Mark?
It was awful fun. I was doing it, and then you can get up to 9, and then Firefoot can really do work. It is a lot of deck space to devote to it.
A lot of pieces as well, but it'll be fun when you get them all out.
But yeah, I think this really helps that discard archetype get off the ground a lot faster and do a lot more for the whole game.
Lovely picture as well, very inspiring. Makes me want to kill some orcs.
Yep, I think this will be around for good.
I guess it's restricted. So I was thinking earlier about what do you include in the Leadership Eomer deck. You probably run this, and you probably run Spear of the Mark, if you're using Tactics Eowyn.
Yeah, I was running Guth Wine, Spear of the Mark, and the horse, but at some point you run out of restricted slots. But they're all good, so it just powers them up faster. And then you can put those Spear of the Marks on allies as well, since they're just Rohan characters.
Even if they're not attacking into the staging area, it's still 1 resource for 1 attack. Why not?
Yep, that's worth it.
Yeah, overall, I think this is a very good card.
I agree. I think it's one of the best, actually, in this box.
Shall we move on? Friend of Friends. It is a 1-cost neutral attachment. It is a condition attachment, which may or may not matter if you like to grief your friends by removing their condition attachments with your Miner of the Iron Hills. It says, attached to a Hobbit hero, limit 2 copies of Friend of Friends in play. Now, I don't think I've ever seen a card with a limitation like that on it before.
Is keeping count, is that limit, or can you do 3?
I'm pretty sure you can do 3 with keeping count, so this seems like a new thing. The text reads, while another hero has Friend of Friends attached hero gets +1 willpower, +1 attack, +1 defense, and +1 hit point. So effectively 4 stats for 1 cost, if another copy is in play.
Right, that's the trick, isn't it?
Yeah, pound for pound, pure value, amazing. But it's a dead card if you don't draw the other copy.
Right, or if it gets discarded by an encounter deck effect.
So I think if you're going to run this, you need a lot of draw, because it's basically blank until you get the 2nd or 3rd copy. And that's the other thing is, if you've got the first 2 out and you get the 3rd one, that's another dead card. So I would probably only ever run this if I was playing Daeron's Runes or something to discard cards to boost willpower, like Protector of Lorien.
Right. I've been playing through that Black Riders box, and there's plenty of shadow effects that actually make you discard attachments. So I've been keeping that 3rd one around if I'm facing shadow cards. Most Hobbit decks try to discard that shadow effect anyway. But if you discarded your 3rd one and then one of those 2 gets discarded off of one of your heroes, then that's really worthless.
Do you think it's a good card?
I do. I think it's quite good. Primarily for Sam, just because his stats are already good, and then they get boosted by his engagement effect, and then if he has this on him as well, he can be, well, he's already questing for 4, and then he'll be attacking for a minimum of 3 if you can attack, or defending for a minimum of 3. Yeah, I think it's really good. It just has that cost of getting both out. It is neutral. You don't need to worry about saving a resource for it. If it's your first copy is in your hand, you can just wait for that 2nd one to come up. I think it's good. I don't think it's a must include for a Hobbit deck, but I think it does work.
Yeah, I was thinking, you said there you don't think it's must include. I was thinking, do I even need it? Because the Hobbit deck's working okay already. I suppose you could drop something like Dunedain Warning and run this instead.
Yeah, I think that'd be worth it. I mean, it's just as cost the same and it's neutral. Just have to get those 2 in play. I have been using it in a couple paired Hobbit decks, and I've been putting it on Sam and either Tom Cotton or Frodo. It works best on Sam, and the 2nd copy it doesn't always kick in, just because those heroes don't necessarily do as much every turn. But it helps quite a bit. And that hit point is nice, although I'm always wary of attachments that give you extra hit points, because if you rely on those, get your damage on, and then say that the attachment's discarded, all your heroes just insta-die.
I don't think that +1 hit point will be that helpful most of the time, but in something like Breaking of the Fellowship, where there's a lot of archery, then it'll be useful.
True. Yeah, I think it's a strong card. I like it.
I think it's pound for pound. It's got to be the most efficient card in the game. 1 resource for +4, basically.
I think you're right.
Of course, it's also 1 resource for nothing. If you don't have another copy out, there is
2
that.
2 resources and 2 cards for 8 stats.
And you get the grief potential that I mentioned earlier.
Right. And your hobbits are usually doing more than one thing, so if they have their fast hitch or some readying on them, they can use that extra stat even if you have it on Merry and he's questing and then attacking as well. You'll get use out of at least 2 of those in most cases.
There are times where I quest with Merry and then use him for an attack, or maybe you need him for a hide test.
Yeah.
Also like the artwork, very evocative. Thematic card too.
Definitely influenced by the movie aesthetic, but I like it.
So I think we've just got the Fellowship cards left. Should we have a look at those?
Sure. We have Frodo Baggins. He is the Fellowship hero, 0 threat cost, 2 willpower, 1 attack, 2 defense, 2 hit points. He has the Hobbit and Ring Bearer trait, and he has a planning action. Exhaust the 1 ring to add 1 resource to a hero's pool.
Any good?
I think so. It's very flexible again. It can get your deck moving, especially if you're playing a Tri-Sphere deck and you are limited by resources. You could get Rosie out turn 1. It's very flexible, but I'm a little scared of using the ring during the planning phase, just because the majority of the quests have effects that will punish you for having that ring exhausted. So it'd be nicer if you could do it anytime, so you could do it after you know you're pretty safe. But that's the fun of it, to have some risk.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought was along the same lines, like, ooh, get some free resources if I don't need to use the ring for anything else. But then they've clearly done a really good job of balancing that by making it a planning phase thing. Because as you said, a lot of the Saga quests do have those effects that get worse if the 1 ring is exhausted. So you really need to think carefully about whether or not you can handle that if you use that action.
Right, I think it's a really good design. It's fun. I'm not sure if I'm going to choose him very much, but I think there's a couple quests that aren't too punishing for using the ring, so I have to look into that.
Yeah, and funnily enough, I often forget to use the ring. So I'm thinking of Black Rider's Frodo. He's got the ability to cancel an encounter card effectively.
Right, that's my favorite one. I think it's risky, but it's a lot of fun.
But there are often times where I will not use that ability all game.
Yeah, it's true. I usually use it once or twice, and it makes a big difference when you do use it, and it's really nice to have that option. But if you have other cancellation, sometimes you never use it.
Yeah, opportunity cost seems like the issue here. You're going to lose Black Rider's Frodo.
I think you can use this Frodo for any of the Saga boxes where you can use Frodo, but I think this one kind of represents him being pretty much spent. He can't do a lot, but he is still inspiring those around him or helping them do their job.
Yeah, adding a resource to a hero's pool is potentially very powerful as well. You can give it to anybody, not even a hero you control. Can be a teammate's hero.
Hobbit flexibility, it's good.
Get that Tactics Elf Helm shooting into play via Frodo. Get Eomer powered up. Get him committed to the quest. Spend a resource via Frodo.
Yeah, you could do that.
I don't know the rules for playing Blackgate and Mountain of Fire in Epic Multiplayer, but I'm assuming you couldn't pass a resource to somebody at the Blackgate if Frodo's at Mount Doom.
I believe so. I think they're considered as separate games, basically.
Yeah, that was extraordinarily wishful thinking by me there. But you never know. Worth looking, at least.
I think the Hobbits will need all the help they can get.
Toughy, is it?
Yeah, I got to play it once in the Epic mode. It was just 3 players, so 1 player with the Hobbits and Mount Doom, and then I was running a Gondor willpower deck, and then my friend was running a Rohan Hama deck, and we held out longer than the Hobbits did.
I thought the Black Gate would be the issue.
I know, there was just a bunch of direct damage, and Hobbits aren't really good at absorbing that direct damage.
Maybe that's where Friend of Friends comes in.
Yep, extra hit points.
Having not played the Mount Doom scenario, I can't really say how important that extra resource could be. Did you use this guy when you played him?
I did. I don't think I actually used his ability ever because I was afraid of exhausting the ring.
What about when your friend played him in Epic Multiplayer?
I actually don't know. He was running his deck, and I was doing all I could to stay above water. And the Black Gate, he wasn't really telling me everything he was doing across the table.
There is a weird situation, I guess. I've never tried to play Epic Multiplayer at home, but I guess you have to play it on the same table somehow.
Yeah, it was only 3 guys. We play on the same table anyway, so that wasn't a problem for us. But...
Cool. Should we have a look at Aragorn?
Sure.
Okay, we have another Fellowship Aragorn. He's a hero. 2 willpower, 3 attack, 2 defense, 5 health, 4 traits. Dunedain, Gondor, Noble, Warrior. Sentinel. The first player gains control of Aragorn, and he has an action. Spend 1 resource from Aragorn's pool to ready him. Limit once per phase. If Aragorn leaves play, the players lose the game. What do you think of this version of Aragorn?
I think it's fun, especially for late campaign. It's possible he could have Andúril and 1 or 2 boons on him. And then if the whole group is playing detachments on him, he could get pretty intense. So I think it's fun. I like it a lot.
And if he's carrying the banner and the sword that was broken.
Right, then he's questing for 4 minimum and then attacking for 4 as well. Defending for 3, he'll get there.
Is there a boon that does something with nobles about giving them a resource?
I think it's called Leader of Men. If you quest successfully, you can add a resource to their resource pool.
I mean, I've not played the Saga campaign all the way to the end, but is that something you could conceivably get onto Aragorn? Is it worth it? Because then by the time you reach this one, you could potentially get 2 or 3 uses out of him every round, maybe, if he's got that attachment.
Right, that's a good idea. Both versions of the Fellowship Aragorn are noble. You're going to be earning that boon at the Chasing the Uruk-hai quest. So yeah, it wouldn't be a problem to get it on him. But he does have those 4 traits, which is, I think, more than any other hero. Is that right?
I'm not sure. I want to say yeah, though, because I think the most so far has been 3.
All good traits, too. Dunedain's not so useful, but I'm glad he has Gondor finally. That's great.
Gives him a lot of flexibility in terms of what you might choose to do with him, because you could give him Era Valandil, play a Dunedain deck. You could play a Gondor deck, and he's going to benefit from stuff there.
Right.
He'll get the benefit of visionary leadership.
Right.
Yeah, I mentioned that I did 1 game of the Black Gate, and that was just a one-off game with a dwarf deck, so no boons, no other Saga cards involved. But I did find his action quite useful.
Yeah, when we were playing it, it became useful as well. We had some unexpected attacks coming from the Mouth of Sauron enemy, and since he's Sentinel and he can ready himself, he's always there for you.
I think in my 1 attempt, every single character had 1 health left by the end of the game, and then they started to fall. Right. Yeah, they started to fall 1 by 1. So I think I would typically sort of quest with him and then use him for an attack. And that was enough to make it, useful to have him around. So I think the action's really good. If you're not running any neutral cards, there's nothing else to do with his resources.
Right, unless you put attachments on him, which usually give him additional resource icons.
Yeah, but if you're playing just a one-off kind of, I'm going to play the Black Gate for a fun type game, then you're still going to get some use out of his action.
At the beginning of the Black Gate, the first player has the option to dig Andúril out of their deck as well. So there you go. You have his stats boosted already.
What happens there? Sorry?
I believe the campaign card at the Black Gate says the first player can raise their threat by 1 to search their deck for Andúril and add it to their hand.
Oh, that's awesome. So you can have the weapon on him from turn 1.
It costs you all your resources, or 3 of them. But yeah, then he's even better.
I mean, that's going to be worth it if you've gone down the route of powering him up.
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing that for my next campaign. Since he comes around so much, give him some of those boons and he'll always be there to benefit from them.
I mentioned in a previous video as well about that Free People's card. I'm not saying it's a great card or worth running, but he's probably one of the best heroes if you want to get that card online.
Yeah, he has half your requirement right there, right? You need 9 traits and he has 4 of them.
Yeah, so who are the other heroes? Chances are you've probably got another 2 or 3 traits among them.
Right. Although these are the most, the noble and warrior, a couple of the most common ones. But if you can have a dwarf and an elf or Sylvan and Noldor on the table, and you got scout, ranger, it'd be pretty easy to come together.
I wonder which heroes you've been using in your Saga games.
Actually, the deck I've been using for this side of it has just been Gondor, so it wouldn't help much. But
still, though, it gives you a really good start to get that event online, which I already claimed was a Saga card, so why not use it in the Black Gate for fun?
Yeah, it would be pretty epic. You could quest. Does it ready everyone, or just ready all heroes?
It readies each character in play, and until the end of the phase, each character you control gets +1 willpower. So at the Black Gate, readying each character in play seems like a good thing to do.
Yeah, it would be huge. I mean, I was running that Leadership Gondor deck that has all the willpower boosts. I mean, say if you have 8, 10 allies out, they're questing for 3 each. If you have a couple buffs out, that's 25 willpower, and then you boost it again, 35 willpower, and then they're all ready for combat phase. That would be huge.
Normally, 35 willpower is just sort of overkill, like you don't really need that much, but actually in that quest, you do.
You really do. Yeah, I was getting 30 willpower about turn 3 with that deck. But it still wasn't enough to hold us through because I made some mistakes. But yeah, it'd be interesting to try it again. I played it a bunch of times solo. Initially thought it'd be a lot harder solo than multiplayer, but we struggled pretty bad in multiplayer as well.
I think 8 or 9 rounds is a good number, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really good. I got halfway through round 9 once solo with that leadership deck, but with any other decks, I've been doing like 5 or 6.
I think I got to 8 or 9 with the Dwarven Miners deck, and I had an absolutely amazing start. I think I had 2 Sigil Miners in the opening hand, and you get that quest card effect, don't you, that puts stuff into play for free, something like that?
Right, got some good stuff there.
Yeah, I think I had all 3 of those allies into play by turn 2, so it had the ideal start. Yeah, I made it through to 8 or 9, and that was the point where it got crazy, and everybody was hanging on by a thread, and then they all died.
You can get the willpower, maybe. You can maybe defend them, but then actually kill anything at the same time. It's crazy.
Yeah, and that's why Aragorn's action was quite useful, because he could help to pick off a chud. There are a couple of 1 defense guys in that scenario, I think.
Right, there's those little surge orcs. And then if you're playing in campaign mode, you get the wraiths on wings in the stationary at the beginning too.
Yeah, they're nasty. Should we have a look at the last card?
Our last card is Orc Disguise. It's a attachment in the Fellowship Sphere. 1 cost. It has the item and armor traits attached to the ring bearer. Limit 1 per hero. While an orc is making an engagement check with you, it gets plus 5 engagement cost and a response. After an orc engages you, discard Orc Disguise. Until the end of the round, that enemy cannot attack you.
Well, for 1 resource, it seems quite good, but you probably only ever play this in maybe 3 to 5 quests in the whole game.
Yeah, I was looking back, and there isn't that many quests that have orcs in them with the ring bearer. I guess, yeah, probably 5. You're probably right.
Is this just a card you use in the final quests of the game, or the Cirith Ungol one as well?
It might be. I'm guessing the last quest, Mount Doom, you're going to be just trying to push as much willpower as you can out the door, and you don't want to save that hero to possibly defend, and then you could safely send them all, knowing that you can just discard this to keep you safe if that orc comes off the deck.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I think the effects of this card are actually pretty good. Plus 5 engagement cost, awesome for hobbits. Yeah, and then you get essentially a sort of pseudo-feint effect, which is really cool.
And it's just sitting there waiting for you to use it. It's not like it'll get discarded out of your hand or anything.
The Mr. Underhill boon is really, really good just to have that on-demand feint.
I always forget to use that too.
Oh, it's so good. There's so many times that card saved me.
Yeah, I believe it. Sometimes I even lost games and then remembered, oh, I had that. I could have pulled the game out.
Those losses are good because it means you won't make that mistake again.
Yeah, that'll teach you.
What are the engagement costs of orc enemies like in the Saga campaign? So I don't really remember having any issues, but there might be 1 or 2 cases where that plus 5 makes a difference.
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I know that it's always helpful for that engagement cost to be, never hurts at least, for it to be higher.
Take Tom Cotton all the way to Mount Doom. You're going to be putting this in.
If you can do that, I'll be impressed.
Challenge accepted. 2 in 1 video.
You're going to be busy just filling out challenges.
Well, I think we've run out of cards to review. What's your feeling about the player cards from Mountain of Fire overall? Ones you like the best?
I think Rosie is going to come to the top for me. She's pretty much going to go into any Hobbit deck that you're running leadership in, or Tom Cotton. I like Elodie and Elrond here. I think I'll be using them a good bit, but not in everything. And then I think Guth Wine is probably my number 2 card after Rosie.
Interesting that you like the attachment more than the hero it's aimed at.
Well, the attachment can be used in a lot of different situations, and Eomer pretty much, I think, has a very limited scope for what kind of decks he can actually go in.
Yeah, don't worry, I agree. I'm probably more excited about using that sword on hammer, to be honest.
Yeah, that'll be really fun. That'll make him a lot better. You can just do things with your deck besides recycle that one event. Yeah, hammer really drains you.
I think for me, I'm probably quite excited about Helm as well, just because those effects that put allies into play can be very useful and more useful than you'd expect. And also that Raise the Shire card is one that I'd like to try, even if looking at the hipster guy will irritate me ever so slightly.
That's funny because those cards are not the ones I was excited about, but you've convinced me a little bit, I think.
Oh, don't get me wrong, I'm excited about all the other ones too. Maybe Captains of the West less so, because it's going to be really hard to actually work it into a deck. There are just so many other options.
That will probably be the least played one in my plays here.
Yeah, all the others though are playable at the very least. Some are really good and 1 or 2 are amazing.
It's a good box.
Yeah, it's going to be really good now that we've got this box. We can do a full Saga campaign as well, finally.
Yeah, it's really good to see the renewed interest in the Saga Quest too. I've seen a lot of people either start campaigns or just start to think about that again.
Also, I mean, it's obvious, right? But there's gonna be a scouring of the Shire scenario based on the cards in this box.
There'd better be.
Tom Cotton, Raise the Shire.
Rosie.
Yeah, it's coming.
I wonder when they'll do it, though. I mean, I wouldn't expect them to wait all the way until Gen Con next year, but that's probably the most likely at this point.
Well, it's got to be next year, because 2018 is the year of the Kenai Took.
Oh, yeah, right, exactly.
If it's not next year, I'm going to be massively disappointed now. And we now have a big announcement coming up in December. If that is the announcement that 2018 is the year of the Kenai Took, then you heard it here first.
I've heard crazier speculations.
Let me guess, a reboot.
2.0.
That's a whole other video. Let's not go down that rabbit hole today.
Yep, who knows? Could be just another cycle. Could be a rebooted core, or just a new core that would kind of like X-Wing core 2.0. It doesn't change the game, just kind of new options. Whatever it is, I'm sure it'll be fun.
I think it's a Kenai Took with +2 attack.
That would be a big announcement.
All right, well, thank you, Joseph, for joining me for this player card review. I hope you enjoyed it, everybody, and please give us your opinions about the cards in the comments and correct all of our lovely mistakes, because I'm sure there were lots of them. Anything you want to add?
Nope, thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it. A lot of fun.